Dr. Aditi Bhargava is back to talk to us about a study that you're doing on COVID vaccine efficacy and safety. And also there was a question or a few questions about how the pandemic has affected people in their mental health. So before we get into why you're doing this study, and again, this is for both unvaccinated and vaccinated people with or without COVID and or adverse effects, as it says here. Can you just remind people your specialty, what you do, and that way kind of get a better background on why you're interested in this topic?
Well, I'm a molecular biologist and a stress researcher. So why am I interested in looking at vaccine efficacy is because, as we all know, that these vaccines, especially the mRNA vaccines that are used mostly in the US, the Pfizer and Moderna vaccine, they are comparatively new technology in terms of obviously no other vaccine before this has been an mRNA vaccine. And that's mRNA technology, something that I've worked on for many years, understand both the pros and cons of mRNA. And the second main thing is that this is the first time I've seen natural immunity being put down in ways that I have not encountered. There's no reason given why natural immunity is not going to work. We've survived, we've evolved for millions of years. All animals have, and plants and bacteria, as well as viruses, have an immune system. So those are some of the key things as to what motivated me to look at the first part of the study, which is about vaccine efficacy compared to natural immunity. We really don't have that data. And the second is the mental health, which is being a big issue, especially for people who don't have much outlet or have been confined in very small places. People have lost their jobs, people have been stigmatized because of their vaccine status, and children have suffered not being able to go to school for many years, losing out on education, losing out on development, both in some ways mental development as well as their immune development, being deprived of exposure to different immunogens. So there's a lot at play here. And finally, in terms of stress, if you are stressed, then you are more prone to getting infections, whether they are bacterial infection or viral infections. And of course, in this period where people were confined or very scared to go out, they ignored their own other diseases or chronic diseases, which then, because they were not taken care of, they got to a stage where if then they became infected with COVID, they really had either worse outcomes, or if they unfortunately died, then COVID could be blamed, no question asked, why they were not treated for their other underlying conditions. So all of this has motivated us to get answers from people, and hopefully we can analyze that data and get the answers out there.
Mother's Day is quickly approaching, and what better gift for mom than a gift that supports this mom by checking out my sponsors. You know the mom in your life needs a superb glass of wine to finish off the day, so check out AllisonWinePromo.com. That's Allison with 1L, winepromo.com, and you get 50% off of my favorite Malbecs from Argentina and 50% off shipping. These are extremely unique wines, just like mom and also just like mom. Two of them are extreme altitude, which means the grapes work super hard, unlike any other wine out there. The higher they are, the harder they work, just like that special mom in your life. So what better than AllisonWinePromo.com to say thank you? But maybe you're thinking that she really needs a cup of coffee to deal with you. So go to twinenginecoffee.com/Allison. That's twinenginecoffee.com/Allison, where you'll get high altitude Nicaraguan roasts that are also USDA certified organic. There's light roast, there's dark roast. There's also a limited coffee right now that is called a black edition. It is processed with honey, which means it has sort of a sweet aftertaste, not like sometimes coffee has a bitter aftertaste. This has a smooth, sweeter finish to it. And I plan to thank you in every video this week. Those of you who go support me by checking out my sponsors or support me on the different platforms, because honestly, being able to do this work allows me to be a full-time mom, which really is the greatest Mother's Day present that any of you guys could give me. So thanks again for that, and let's continue on with the video. Yeah, okay, so how does the survey work, and is it different if you got the vaccine or didn't get the vaccine, had let me say that again. How does the study work, and how does it differ depending on if you got the vaccine, didn't get the vaccine, or if you had adverse reactions, didn't have adverse reactions? Talk a little bit about that.
Right. So if you are, let's say, unvaccinated, so you'll be asked the basic health and your basic demographic questions, and there are certain questions, let's say race and ethnicity, that don't apply to people who are not living in the US, because the race and ethnicity classification is very specific for the US. So those questions will not even appear for if you don't select US as your country. Similarly, we are not gathering any telephone numbers or any other that kind of data from non-US participants. So if you're unvaccinated and you choose that, then after you've given your baseline health, and again, if you don't have any serious health issues, then the questions are very short. So if you're unvaccinated and you select that, then there will be no questions asked about what kind of vaccine you received. You couldn't have had any adverse events, obviously. And but if you select you're vaccinated, then it'll give you a choice to answer whether or not you had any adverse events. If you had any adverse events, did you report them? What were the kind of adverse events and things like that? Similarly, it'll ask you if you had COVID. If you say no, then there'll be no questions asked about what were your symptoms. If you didn't have COVID, you couldn't have symptoms. So the question length will vary depending on what kind of answers you have. If you didn't have any, similarly for mental health questions, there are lots of answers where you can say not applicable, or it didn't happen to you, or if you don't want to answer that particular set of questions, then you can skip that module and go on to the next one. But obviously, the more thorough answers we get, the more detailed answers we get, the more reliable the data set is.
There was a comment that came in from my locals community, allisonmar.locals.com, if you're watching this somewhere else, that they took this study out of curiosity, but very hesitantly. They took the survey, I should say, filled out the questionnaire, and do not trust narrative experts anymore. So I'm curious, do you think you're going to get any kind of resistance from people? Like, how is my information going to be used if I say I didn't get the vaccine, or like my privacy could be exploited? It's just because of a lot of the stuff that we've just talked about, how this has been really polarizing and in a lot of cases politicized, and you hear stuff like just everybody just pointing fingers at each other, and concerns like I could lose my job or whatever else. Do you think you're gonna find resistance to people who would be willing to take this because of that atmosphere?
A very pertinent question. So just to clarify, this is not a study that's being sponsored in any way by UCSF. I'm a UCSF faculty. And just so you know the process, that if you're going to do this kind of study, you have to get an approval, what is called an institutional review board approval, that determines that the consent is informed consent. So if you look at my form, the informed consent, it tells you all about how or who can potentially have an access to it. So in my experience, only if you are going to do something which is not right, that such an audit happens. So we don't ever analyze data in a way, we anonymize data. So there is no way for a person who is doing the data analysis to actually link it to your name or your email address. Otherwise, so that doesn't happen. Second is that, interestingly, so far the study's been live, or the link has been live for about a month. We've gotten over 21,000 responses. So not all of them have completed the study. Some of them left it in between, some 20% or so. So in that case, as you can see, that we don't have a full data set. So if people left after 25%, we have a lot on the vaccine side, but we don't have a lot on the mental health side. Now, the questions are also, there's a, depending on how you answer the questions that appear to you are different. So first, let me just assure anybody who is vaccinated or unvaccinated, we are not sharing that information with any agency. So no CDC, no NIH, nothing. This is not even UCSF. UCSF is not getting that information. So it's only the PI and the study team. I don't have time to go into and look at 21,000 people and see who is writing what. The unvaccinated people are a very important group of people, because they are the ones who are going to let us know if the vaccine is really efficacious or not. So to me, that's one of the most valuable group. But we also need to know what their behavior was in terms of, if they only stayed inside the house, then if they didn't get COVID, then that's because they never really ventured out. But if they were unvaccinated and they didn't stop doing what they would normally do, then, and they still didn't get COVID, then that tells a lot. Whereas same thing for the vaccinated. If they got vaccinated and they just stayed inside their house, or didn't go out anywhere, or didn't interact with people, and they didn't get COVID after that, it's not about efficacy. It's about that they were just isolated. But if they took the vaccine and went out and lived their normal life and then got COVID, then it talks about efficacy and breakthrough infections. So these are the kind of things that we really need to learn and know. We need to know what their background health was. So if you were completely free from any major risk diseases which are known for now, we don't know what other diseases that you have could put you at higher risk for getting more adverse events from either COVID or vaccine. For example, we know if you have diabetes or if you're obese, then if you get COVID, you are at higher risk of getting worse symptoms than people who are not obese or who are not diabetic. Similarly, treatments, if you're diabetic and if you're given glucocorticoids or steroids, then your blood sugar goes up. And if your blood sugar goes up, that's not good for you. So your outcomes will be bad. So we are still in that, there's so much of unknown, and we are trying to, blood group you talked about, there's data out there that says people with a certain kind of blood group are at higher risk of having adverse outcomes or clots. Is that really true? So as we learned about that, we modified a survey to ask about blood groups. People wonder, why are we asking about blood groups? So there's always a rationale why we are asking a certain question. And I don't want to give, again, away a lot, because I don't want people to give me that biased answer that this is what I want to hear, or this is what, if they say that, then the study will prove this or disprove that. So I'm seriously hoping that people will answer truthfully, and that's why it's people's response. If it's garbage in, garbage out. So if they give me garbage responses, we are going to get garbage data out. If they give me truthful responses and things that are actually happen to them, then we will get data that's reliable.